What's up, Billy? How's everything
Uh,
going?
same old, man. Good evening, Jeff. Good to see you, man.
Yeah,
Everything's going
likewise,
great.
man. Every 2 weeks, man, I've been calling this thing. I've been calling this little meeting business leadership and lessons learned. I think that's a fitting title for this for our when we catch up, just based on your background and my background, and um, we definitely have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the lessons learned part that we like to talk about. Any good news coming from your camp this week?
Well, good news, I guess, is we don't have no bad news.
Ah,
Nothing burned up, blew up. No big forest fires or wildfires or structure fires. So I think everything's good. It's really been a good week and a good 2 weeks since our last get together. So that's good. We went through an episode there. It seemed like about every other night we done a show. It was, some big event somewhere in the U.S. that was affecting not only us but our neighbors and brothers and sisters also. So I guess this week the good news is there was no bad news.
yeah. No, I was thinking when we were messaging earlier about what kind of topics we want to discuss tonight. I was like, and I'm scrolling like there's not been any negative any negative type things. But business wise, you had any new things going on? You have any clients in the last 2 weeks?
Well, actually, yes, we had a client reach out, and this was exciting. It was a client that we've done some work for that came about and wants us to do a bloodborne pathogen program for about 80 folks. They have 3 locations in Southwest Virginia, and they're required, as you know, by the OSHA regulation to have the bloodborne pathogens. So we're putting together a program for them. We're going to go in and do a short lecture on bloodborne pathogens, and then we're going to do some hands-on, break out some PPE kits, and talk about cleaning up some spills, and actually get our hands dirty doing some cleanup. So we've got that on the agenda. And as you and I was talking earlier, I came across an opportunity out in Kentucky that was looking for a speaker, and so we submitted a proposal to them about coming out and doing a program on that you and I talk about when a circus comes to town, which is integrating media in with fire EMS, and it can be easily integrated with any business. I know that that's one thing I'm trying to transpose my background into the private sector, into business, and dealing with the media. Whether if you've got an event that draws. I don't want to necessarily say national, but it could be national because the one that I've had in this program was actually international. But even down to regional, we had an incident here just this week where a student brought a loaded 9mm to the high school.
Yep.
And was arrested and got some local media. So those folks are going to show up. So we've put together a program really over the last 6 months to a year on how to work with that when those folks show up.
When you look at the thing to point out of that when we talk about private sector, there is private sector is not immune to negative media, right? Negative press, and they're only they could attract that just through whatever choices, bad decisions, all the things. But there's a positive side. I think of some people that I've worked with to where their event that they're hosting or what have you becomes so big to where it starts capturing media attention, and then they're having to be on camera, they're having to go and interview, they're having to put that narrative out there, and so to say. And you have, when you're like we talked about in one of our first episodes, the lady with the FBI, you have one opportunity when that mic comes up in that hot button time to be able to convey your message, and just being a little prepared to be able to do that. So you have business owners are going to be faced with probably more positives. It's really good for them because that's something. Case in point was the first interview I had done in years. You remember, I did undercover work. I was cloak and dagger. We we worked behind the scenes in a lot of stuff in plain clothes. And I remember the first on camera interview I did years later, you're talking probably 12 to 13 years later. And when the lady turned the camera on, I was like, oh crap, I'm on camera. That was a Ricky Bobby moment. I was like, what am I doing here? So so you bring out some really good points on the private sector, but man, what you got to work with that day, and I've told you this, and you were we've also pointed this out. We're quick to brush over those really what I think is a very critical moment, part of your life, your career, and the impact that not only it had on you, but what you can do to be able to use that for other teaching points, other agencies, lessons learned, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you bring a lot of good points up there. And I think the private sector has a lot more opportunity than the public sector does there because we talk about with the private with the public sector, it's most of the time it's going to be a negative event. With the public sector, it may not always be that way. It may be something that's very positive if the media is going to show up. And I will go back to something that's going on in Franklin County today. For those who don't know about Franklin County, it's located in South Central Virginia with a population of about 55,000, but predominantly rural. Well, all week the New York City Fire Department has been in Franklin County
All that.
doing some training on wildland fires. And how many rural counties in South Central Virginia can tell you that they've got the New York City Fire Department, not just people, but apparatus sitting in the county. So that's a positive spin that the media has been in town doing stories on like that. And we just want to with our program is that it's not if they're coming, it's when they get here. How do we make ourselves look good? And how do we work to make their job as easy as it can be, considering what the situation is that they're covering? And I think we have some good points to bring out. It's nothing saying that we're smarter than anybody else that's dealt with media, but we have been in the arena
Yeah.
when the event was going down. It's not something that we watched on a YouTube video or something. We've read in a paper. We've been there. We played ball when it was actually happening. So I think that's where we've got some good traction, and I appreciate this avenue to get it out. And so I'm about to answer your question. I'm excited about that opportunity, and it's in like in Kentucky, in a suburb of Cincinnati there. So we're waiting. We should know something tomorrow on whether that comes through or not.
Well,
So it's
that'll
good there, and looking for other opportunities every day.
Yeah, and that's something that we both do. And folks, if you can easily connect with us, and we'll make sure you have our links. And because we that's what I do for work. That's what I do for a living, is helping share those stories. And whether I spend a lot of time teaching on business, but I love pausing, talking about some of the experiences I had while I worked in public safety, and then I also enjoy the motivational and inspirational side of kind of that story. And I was thinking the other day, I'm like, you know what? I really haven't walked Billy through that whole journey that I've been telling on other people's podcasts and platforms today. And um, I was thinking that maybe next in Thursday 2 weeks, maybe I can walk you through kind of the cool what was the what was viewed as one of the turning points in my life, and as a negative became absolutely one of the coolest positives, that the way everything kind of wound up. And I call that the puzzle. I'm kind of working on that name, but it's like the puzzle of life, and just how those pieces come together. And sometimes we're assembling these pieces over outside of that square, and you don't realize it until it all starts to coming together, and it ends up being in this really cool, purposeful journey. And I know just our proximity to the home county that I grew up at, I kind of left out of there. Didn't I've shared it with a couple of people. Jeff Robertson had no clue. Like, we know this part. We didn't know the backstory. We didn't know the whole story, and then kind of where I ended up at. So I'm hoping in a couple of weeks I'll be able to bring you up to speed with that as
Good
well, and
deal.
then we can keep working on yours. I was going to tell you on the business front. because this is that 5-year anniversary of what the thing that just the business side I wanted to touch on. I pulled up some news from 5 years ago this week, just to keep everything top of mind along the conversation that we've been talking about. Um, this was the week when March 30th, when the governor, Northam at the time, issued that first stay at home order, Executive Order 55, directing residents to remain at their homes except for essential activities like getting food, medical care, or going to work if they were in essential industries. And if you notice, my highlight of essential always kind of digs at me when it comes into that. And then came shortly after he had ordered the closure of all non-essential businesses on March 23rd. And that was Executive Order 53, shutting down places like restaurants, except for takeout and delivery, gyms and theaters, while also closing schools for the remainder of the academic year. Again, folks, continuity plans are a big deal, and that business interruption, it's easy for me to kind of plan out for a fire. It's easy for me to plan out for when the lights go out. I've worked with internet outages, and I have a plan for a plan. I've always done that. This is one of the first times around this week, Billy. I was standing out on my back deck, and my wife said, she said, what are you going, what's the plan? What's the plan, Jeff? And I said, I don't know. And when she turned, and I remember this like it was yesterday, because it's the first, she said, it's the first time I've ever heard you say you didn't know.
Hmm.
And I was like, and I stopped and I told her, I was like, there's too many moving parts. There's too many uncertainty. I've never been told to stay home and not leave and not go to my business, and that my business was not essential. And so that's kind of just, I told you I wanted to touch briefly on where I was business wise. And I do this because if your business hasn't been affected by interruption, not on the COVID side, but it's coming. And having your, having a continuity plan. I've dealt with a fire. One of my last W2 positions, we had a significant fire that interrupted our production. And the staff's like, what are we gonna do? And I pulled everybody in. I'm like, listen, I got a plan. I had a plan. As soon as that phone rang this morning, I already had a plan, y'all. I said, you guys are safe. I need y'all focusing on your work. I've already lined up other manufacturers. I've already lined up different suppliers. We have to keep worried about our day to day and keeping going. Same thing being out there in a rural area where the internet was sketchy. And when your business now, when you go to ring someone up, it's almost an internet based transaction, dude. So just we ended up with hotspots and laptops that we could jump on, and versus having desktops that were plugged into the wall, we switched into a laptop type environment to where it was easy for us to connect a hotspot when we needed to. So just thinking about that is, we're not looking at someone stepping in and calling your business unessential and shutting you down, but be planning ahead, like what ifs, and finding someone like yourself, that can sit down with someone on that kind of emergency operations plan or that backup plan. So just, I wanted to point that out of where we were, and I wanted to hear from you. What about, what's going on with public safety 5 years ago this week?
Well, you don't let me forget to touch on the point about small businesses and, that came up during that. But we were in the same way. We were, overnight, I became the expert on COVID, and I put the
Sure.
expert in italics and quotations and parentheses and whatever you put there, because
You was a guy answering the phone.
yeah, I was trying to pick up the phone so but we did learn a lot, but we had a lot of challenges that we didn't have a plan for. We couldn't pull up. Now, if it would have been a fire, like you said, or if it had been a tuberculosis outbreak, or it had been a building collapse, all those plans were sitting on the shelf. You just had to get the book and flip over to the appendix and roll with there. But a lot of that we didn't have in COVID. Sure, some of it transferred over. If we had to evacuate, we knew how to do that. But I remember, and I think I said it on a couple of calls back, that we started having conference calls. We called them COVID calls every day at 3 o'clock. And I mean, when I say every day, it was every day. It was 7 days a week at 3 o'clock. And they started out being about 45 minutes, and sometimes you get less, and some you get a little bit more. But I remember having a conversation one day that you know y- if we go into battle today, we should already have the exit strategy on how we're going to get out of it. And I think that was one of the things. It's a lot of times we go into stuff and we learn to do stuff, and we don't know when to stop. It's like, I've had friends that that were musicians and would play instruments and were fairly good at playing it. They just didn't know when to stop playing it.
Yeah.
They'd be playing a song and you'd get to the end and they didn't know how to stop playing. How do you get out of this song? And we got the same thing with there is okay, we got this. We thought we had it and we was confident in our minds that we had it, but we don't know what this thing's going to end tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. And in reality, some of it is still going on because there's still money out there. When you had ESSER money, you had CARES money. Some of that stuff is just coming to a closeout date as we speak. And I remember that one of the things that somebody brought up in one of these calls is what are we going to do to help the small businesses? Because the businesses are going to close. They're not going to be able to open. Some of them is never going to open again. And what can we do to help these folks get back on their feet? Along with how do we get food to folks that can't get out and may not have money or depending on a paycheck and get out? So we were fortunate. We had on those COVID calls, we had a lot of smart stakeholders in there that first thing they did was got together and had another chat right after this, and our group formed a 501c3 right after. I mean, literally within just a couple of weeks, and it was feeding Franklin County, and so that got us a lot of stuff. We got a lot of food from the Southwest Virginia Food Bank over in Roanoke. We had food from different food banks coming in. So every day we had a truck that we assigned a team under the ICS structure to go out to different parts of the county, and we would provide food. Now it wasn't steaks, but it was food.
Yeah.
Was out there, and we also started putting together a team that was there when the reverse started, when stuff started opening up. Okay, now restaurants can open up, but they can only serve outside. Well, now you can open up, but you can only have 10 people inside. You'd have people. So we started getting stakeholders involved that were experts on that. And we were really proud of that because I think we were one of the first localities, especially in our neighborhood. I think there was probably localities in larger areas that probably did it. But we were really proud that we were able to jump on that and work with those small businesses and help them understand that, this is bad, but it could be a lot worse. And, one of the favorite quotes always uses, we're going to land the plane.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, we're going to be able to land. And got out and got on that. And a lot of that, Jeff, is just on a sunny day, it's just networking with folks and knowing who to call and, and have those contacts and reach out to those people. So when the storm starts coming, the rainy day starts coming, we knew who to call. I can call up Jeff and go, hey, man, we've got this going on. And I hope that our listeners know that we want to be a resource to them, whether it be through your company or whether it be through my company, but not only on the bad day, but also on what we'd like to call a sunny day. Let's talk. Let's look at your continuity of operations plan, a COOP plan. There's also continuity of operations of government, because when this stuff happens, like you talked about a fire this morning. Well, let's just say that fire was in a government facility. You got 100,000 citizens in Roanoke City that their day really wasn't affected. When they want to pay their taxes, they expect you to be open. When they want to come in and get a building permit, they expect you to be open. We don't care about your fire, just be open. Those day-to-day events keep spinning. And, where do you go when the dispatch center is now off limits? I think Covington's going through some of that stuff now with their school system and having odors and, like that. The parents still want to send those kids to school. Well, how do we fix that problem? And we don't want to get caught with our pants down. We want to have that plan. And sometimes redundancy is not enough. Sometimes we've got to have 2 and 3 redundancies. I know in Franklin County, and I can speak for with our emergency communication system, we have three redundancies built into that. One can go down, okay, nobody ever knows it, and we flip to this, then you had to have three catastrophic failures before our emergency communication system didn't work. Could it happen?
Billy, let me tell you, and here's why, folks. I'm lessons learned. Jeff, the 911 dispatcher, was sitting there one night, and I heard this just reoccurring alarm that we normally didn't hear. And finally, we kind of, it was one of those where you just like you had to look under the thing. You're just trying to find and there was a box in the back room, and it was just a connection box, and it was our connection to the whoever the telephone company was at the time, and that alarm was going off because that had been broke. So I went out to grab a phone line. It was dead, right? And I went out. It was dead. And this is 90. You're I think I have a bag phone by now. I'm bag phone Jeff. You're bag phone Billy, right?
Yeah.
That's our names. But I'm pretty sure I have a bag phone, but so I go out and bag phone don't have a dial tone, right? So anyway, I try to call out, can't call anyone. I start trying. All of our lines are dead. So I go out and I call. Maybe it was one of the officers that was with me had a phone in his car, and we called 911. Can't remember. I tried to call in, nothing's coming out. So basically, the system is down, and we had to. I won't say his name, but the main phone guy. He has a really common name, and he was very accessible. Right? We ended up having to drive to his house. We stopped by the old sheriff. Like I knocked on his door at 3 a.m. and said, "Hey, the phone systems are out in the county," and that happened like back on my watch. And so then after that, we put in all these alternate type plans, and there was some kind of snafu or equipment upgrade or something happened. It was something very, very simple, but I don't think they realized that it had disrupted services back then. So then you not only had that, we built in some systems to protect that, but then we had that truck we could take up on the mountain, and we could run operations from that old command center thing that we used to have as well. So tons of plans in place. But I wanted to tell you that. I don't know if you remember that, but that was.
I remember the old truck used to take it up on Grassy Hill there and utilize it. But, and as time goes on, you don't know how much, you know, I can remember, and you probably can too, when there was one dispatcher that wrote everything down by hand on one of the log sheets when he came in. And, really, if the phone line didn't go down, there wasn't a whole lot to go down unless the power went down.
Yeah.
Well, now as technology advances, there's so much to go there. And like I said, I know now that there's three redundancies that go in there. So you have to have three, and it's not bad redundancy. This is three catastrophic failures, which can happen. I mean, look what happened with Helene, and look what happened with, Katrina, where, you go to these things, everybody's got a cell phone. And what do you do when there ain't no cell phone towers? How do you go through there?
The other contingency plan was I had a Rolodex full of phone numbers, not a Rolodex full of addresses.
That's right.
So I had to. So then we started collecting in case this ever happened again. Like we started getting physical addresses for people that if we had to send someone to their house to like, hey, there's an issue, we can't call you or whatever. So I remember us collecting, upgrading our data on just what we had on people and that we needed to call during emergency situations as well.
But Jeff, that's a positive. That was a lesson learned.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You put in the plan, and you don't know what you don't know, and you think that most of the time you feel pretty comfortably prepared till something, i.e., COVID, happens, and there's not a policy manual to break out, and But
that's one of the things that when you talk about you don't know what you don't know. It's a great segue point. Into some of what we were going to talk about tonight on the business part of what we see sometimes is a lot of folks when you get into county and the government side that we've done, but there seems to be sometimes a disconnect in the role that a county, town, or city, or even a state for that matter, that plays and the role that they play into creating and cultivating just business in general. I was reading comments and just different things, and reading some other feeds and just seeing what kind of noise it is. It's what I was telling you when we were talking earlier. It just kind of it struck me. I'm like, man, it's a good point for us to kind of step in from our perspective in government and non-government to be able to kind of point that out. And one of them comes from um, where new businesses are coming in. And I think sometimes folks think that the county or the towns or the township or whoever is like, they're the ones that's behind that. And I don't think, it seemed to me like folks didn't realize that, no, that's a business owner, or that's an investor, or that's a Jeff Robertson who's chasing his dream and trying to create a fitness center, or whatever that might look like. That's someone who's reaching into their savings or going to the bank and gotten their capital through loans or what have you, to be able and go to establish that business that everybody in that jurisdiction or whatever, and outside of that jurisdiction gets to come to, or visit a restaurant, whether it's retail or shopping and entertainment, all those things. The county and the town, cities, they provide the infrastructure, they collect the tax of that comes along with that, but they're not there might be some attraction, like they're giving there may be some incentives tax wise or whatever, but they're not the one that's taking that chance to put that business in whatever jurisdiction. That's somebody or an investment group.
Yeah, you're right. There's the localities, and Virginia's unique in a couple ways too. There that I'll speak to in a little bit, but it's really the local government's duty to provide the infrastructure. And what does infrastructure mean? That means police, schools. That means water, sewer, internet, your other utilities. It's not their job to go out and you know, build that fitness center or build that hotel or build that restaurant. That's up for the private developers and investors. So what we do is, we create some corridors that are attractive to business, and then, as a locality, we have economic development folks that reach out to, other developers and entrepreneurs to come in and do that. So when somebody wants to invest money in your locality, that's certainly a great thing because they've done their research. They just don't wake up one morning and go, "Hey, we're going to go to Franklin County and build a Cracker Barrel."
Yeah.
You've got to have rooftops to support that clientele or that business that's coming in there. And most of the time when you and I learn that Wawa's coming to Salem, Wawa's been working on that for 5 years.
Yeah.
They've already studied the demographics. They've got a plan, what's meeting their demographics. And most time it's an income level you have to have so many cars that are passing, this particular point. And they do all that studies, and they have teams that go out and study this stuff. So that's not tax money going into that development. Now, let me add on a little bit more too, that kind of, I think it kind of ties Virginia's hands a little bit. And there's different kind of governments within states. And Virginia is a Dillon rule state, and that goes back to the 1800s. And what a Dillon rule state is, that it is a state that's set up effectively where that you only have the powers that are granted to you by the General Assembly. So what does that really mean? So let's just say that Roanoke wants to put a new runway at their airport and to attract, larger jets. Well, there's only certain ways they can collect money to do that. They can't go to Roanoke City Council and go, "Hey, I got a great idea. Let's tax every pair of Nike tennis shoes that's sold. Let's put a 2-cent tax on it." Can't do that because the state government says that you can't do that. Now, we could put a meals tax on up to a certain point, or we could put in Roanoke City a bag tax on up to a certain point. because the General Assembly says that the local jurisdiction has that authority to do that. And a lot of that stuff, Jeff, is not across the board. I'll give you an example on that. There's certain counties in the state of Virginia, Pennsylvania County being one, that can put a tax on their citizens for the explicit reason of building a school. Well, Franklin County can't do that because the General Assembly's not approved it for Franklin County. So what you have to do is go out and have a referendum and let the voters decide. And it has to be a binding referendum. And once that's passed, then you can do that. But again, the General Assembly has to do that. Now, let's take the airport analogy and move it to Charlotte, North Carolina. North Carolina is a home rule state. A home rule state has more flexibility in governance, that they don't rely on the state as much. So Charlotte can come up and say, all right, let's tax every pair of red tennis shoes that show in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're going to use this money to build another runway. Well, they can do that because they're a home rule state. Now, most states are a combination of all, but Virginia is a true Dillon ruled state. And I think that ties our hands in certain things. And I'll hear people talk about, well, why don't we go out and put a tax to get a new school built? Because you can't. Now the Board of Supervisors can appropriate money to build a school, but we can't create a tax and dedicate that tax to build a school. Now let's take it one step further. Jeff, let me ask you a question here. This is in case you're ever on Jeopardy. How many independent cities are there in the United States?
I have no clue, Billy.
Take a shot. Take a guess.
10.
You're close. And most people will come out with 50,000 or something like that. It's 41. There's 41 independent cities in the state of Virginia. How many of them you think, in the United States?
United States.
41 in the United States. How many do you think's in Virginia?
Probably 2.
38.
38.
There's 38 independent cities in Virginia. The only 3 cities in the United States that are independent that's outside of Virginia is Baltimore, Maryland, St. Louis, Missouri, and Carson City, Nevada. They are independent. Now, what I mean by independent, you live in Roanoke City, so you pay Roanoke City taxes, correct?
Yep.
What county do you live in?
Technically, it would be Roanoke County, but it's
Well, you don't. No,
yeah,
you
really
live in
the city.
Roanoke County. You live.
Yeah.
Roanoke City is an independent jurisdiction. All right, let's move that over to again. I'll use Charlotte as an example. If you live in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, you also live in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. If you live in Chicago, Illinois, you also live in Cook County, Illinois. If you live in Houston, Texas, you live in Harris County, Texas. So outside of those 38, cities are still part of counties. And there's advantages to that. So why am I saying this? Well, cities have certain infrastructure they're required to have. Roanoke City has to have a school system. They have to have a police department. They have to have a water department. But a town doesn't. A town in Rocky Mount is a town. Denton is a town.
Mm-hmm.
Towns can pick and choose what service they want to provide. There is no Vinton school system. It's a Roanoke County school system because Vinton is inside of Roanoke County. There is no, maybe, I don't know that much about Vinton, but I know there's not a school system. But let's use Rocky Mount. There is no Rocky Mount jail. It's a Franklin County jail. There is no Rocky Mount school system. It's a Franklin County school system. Well, let's just take it a step further. Let's just say that Rocky Mount decided they want to do animal control. Well, Rocky Mount doesn't have animal control. That's under Franklin County, but Rocky Mount could certainly provide that service, and Franklin County will stop providing that. And where I'm going with this is that a lot of this ties back to tax money. And if you think about it, there's lots of cities that look at reversion. Martinsville's been talking about this for 10 or 15 years. So let's just say Roanoke decided they want to do that. What would Roanoke's advantage And population has nothing to do with it. A lot of people think that the population has a lot to do with it. I can tell you the smallest city in Virginia is less than 3,000 people, and the largest one's about 90,000 that are towns. I mean, the largest town is about 90,000 people. So what would the advantages be? Well, if Roanoke decided they wanted to revert back to a town, and there's a process that has to be, you have to have a referendum, then that referendum has to be approved at a General Assembly. But at that point, Roanoke City could stop providing services, but the county of Roanoke would have to pick that up. Now, the downside to the citizens of the county is they got to pick up, a lot of stuff. The downside to the citizens of the city is now they got to pay Roanoke County taxes. I live in Rocky Mount. I pay Rocky Mount taxes and I pay Franklin County taxes. And I hear a lot of times going back to that social media and this noise that we were talking about with things being built in Rocky Mount. With some people going, why do we have to pay double taxes? Well, that's why, because you are in a dual enroll state, and in Virginia, towns are part of counties. So even though I'm in the town of Rocky Mount, I pay taxes to the town of Rocky Mount for a service level that's higher than what the county provides. But I pay it to the county of those service levels that the town don't provide. If I call a fire truck tonight, it's going to come from the town of Rocky Mount. If I call a police car, it's going to come from the town of Rocky Mount. If I call an animal control office, it's going to come from the county of Franklin.
Right.
So you have to pay taxes to both, where the cities are divided into their own jurisdiction. So I think a lot of people don't know, and they get on the social media sites that's out there today and start expressing their opinion without knowing.
You don't know what you don't know. You got it, right? That's why we're kind of talking about it, right? Just you're would you, so from the business side, county, if I'm a business owner, I'm going to pay town tax. The town's got a business license. If we're going to use Rocky Mount as our anchor, Rocky Mount's got a business license. Franklin County doesn't. Franklin County, you report out to the Commissioner of Revenue. That is your two main business requirements, basically. If you're in the town of Rocky Mount, you don't have to register with Franklin to the town handles all that stuff.
But you have to have a business license in the town of Rocky Mount.
Yep, got to have business license in town of Rocky Mount and Boone's Mill. Meals tax is the business owner. If you're running a restaurant, you collect the tax for that individual locality.
Well, let me just say something about that too, Jeff, and I'm sure you know, but it's just on my mind. And this is a good thing right here. So a good point. You're correct, and there's meal taxes on prepared food in Rocky Mount and in Franklin County, but the tax is different. You may eat at a restaurant in a town of Rocky Mount, and you're going to pay a 6-cent meals tax. You cross the street into Franklin County, you're going to pay a 4-cent meals tax. Same restaurant, same food item.
Yeah.
Locality. So a lot of times that people don't, well, I already got a meals tax 6 cents. Now the town of Rocky Mount has one of 6. And again, that's limited by what the General Assembly allows you to do. Franklin County just can't come in and say that we're going to put a 25-cent meals tax on. You can't do that. I think that I want to say maybe 8 cents is the maximum you can put. Don't quote me on that, but there is a max to that. I know the cigarette tax is out now. That's a big topic around. And I know that 40 cents a pack is the most you can put on a pack of cigarettes.
They have, I was doing some research. The city's talking about raising their meals tax, and I was just researching it based on the conversations I was having. Our area and around our areas, we have some of the highest meals tax in the U.S. Roanoke and I think Christiansburg ranks up there pretty high with meals tax. So you have that. So we got the business owner. If you run a restaurant, is responsible for collecting that tax. And then if you're selling retail items, the retail sales tax, the business owners collect those as well. So if you got apparel, whatever that looks like, selling whatever those whatever those retail items are, that the business owner is collecting that and reporting those to the state. Meals tax gets collected and it's reported and paid into the locality. You can still pay it to the localities, but now there's an online portal. Your retail sales tax, you go in, you put in your sales, it calculates the tax, and you remit the money. Very, very simple process. But the business owner is essentially the tax collector for the localities and for the state in that case.
And the locality gets back a percentage of that. That tax comes back to the locality. Typically, it's about 2 months behind, and that's why the drive is that to shop local. You always hear that, shop local.
Yeah.
And I get angry when people. My wife will tell you that I get angry about if I'm not going to go to Roanoke Walmart. Just not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Rocky Mount Walmart because that's where I pay my taxes at. Then there's things that I have to go to Roanoke to purchase that I don't have the option to purchase it here. But I'm a big proponent of shopping locally because every time I go to Roanoke McDonald's and I pay that Roanoke meals tax, that money went to Roanoke. If I buy it at McDonald's at Rocky Mount, that money went to Rocky Mount. And, I just believe in doing that. But you're right on that. As far as spot on, and there's lots of taxes out there that people don't understand. I seen one today on a somebody posted on a Franklin County website, and I'm gonna sound a little ignorant here, but I'm not sure exactly what the law is called. But if you're in Roanoke County or Franklin County, and if you are in any county in Virginia that touches Interstate 81, or you're in a county that touches Interstate 81, you have to pay a tax for Interstate 81. And somebody posted on Facebook today, it came out, says highway tax. And it was like 70 some dollars. Well, part of that goes to Interstate 81 because Roanoke County touches Interstate 81 and Franklin County touches Roanoke. Now, Henry County don't pay that tax, but that's what is doing that's what is paying for those upgrades to Interstate 81 is, well, I'm sure it's not paying for all of it, it's paying a big portion. There's also a special tax if you have an electric vehicle that you pay, or there's vehicles that are real high mileage you pay. And a lot of people, again, see that tax and it's not been explained. And I think a lot of places do that. I think I can't speak to Roanoke City, Roanoke County, but I can speak to Franklin County. I think Franklin County does a very poor job of explaining what the tax dollar is used for.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you can go on the website. It will say public safety gets $26 million, and that's 14% of the budget. Okay, what does that really mean? What does that, 90% of Franklin County thinks public safety is that ambulance that goes up and down the road. It says public safety on the side. They don't understand that that's also the court bailiffs in the courthouse. That's the sheriff's department. That's the corrections department, and they don't know that's the fire department. That's animal control. All of that is under that public safety function. And I'm the same way. I look at, well, what is health and welfare? Why are they getting all this money? And I think Franklin County has always done a very poor job of explaining to the citizens of what this tax dollar is spent for. And I think that if they did, not saying we're still going to pay more taxes, but I think it would certainly be a little more palatable knowing that, oh, really, that is what my tax money is going for. And I think tax raises, when Franklin County is looking to raise taxes this year, 2 cents on real estate. So here's what will happen. They advertise 2 cents. Once you advertise, it can go down. The county administrator recommended 1%. They advertise 2. They'll have this big blow up meeting. It'll go on for a couple of hours. They'll knock it down to 1 cent, and it will go as the way that it will work in the end there. But what did that 1 cent increase go to? So my thing is, I've never understood to me, it's easy on which side of the fence you want to stand on. Do you want this service? You got to pay for it.
Yeah.
You don't want the service, we don't pay for it. But, everybody is talking in Franklin County now is pushing for CTE building.
What's that mean?
CTE, it's something technical education.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yep.
I
I
can't
got it.
think what the C stands for. Roanoke is building one over on Peters Creek Road. They got one over there, but it's something technical education. Well, so this building is going.
Career and technical.
They're looking at about $80 million to build this building. Okay, so everybody is fussing for this building to be built, and I think it should be. I'm a proponent, but something's got to pay that $80 million. And every year the county has to balance the budget. So if that budget's balanced, it don't have $80 million. And that's $80 million. It may drop after the school gets open, but you're still looking at 20, 30, 40 million to make it run. You know this more than I do, but a business.
How would they raise that, Billy? Is that taxes? Is that bonds? Is that the grants?
That could be all of the above.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That could be all of the above, but somewhere in there it's going to be tax increase. And you got to figure out then, I think 1 cent real estate in Franklin County gets you about $1 million, I believe it is. So we need 80 million. So go figure that out. And you know more about this than I do, because I know you quote it right off the top of your head, but there's something like 80% of revenue from a business, or 80% of expenditures from a business goes to salaries and operational costs.
Yeah.
So you're looking at $80 million to build a school. Well, you will have recurring costs of 60 to 65 million every year. And that's fine if you want that school. Last year I was at board meetings, and last year Franklin County closed down 2 schools, and everybody was picketing about keep these schools open, but don't raise taxes. Okay, it can't be both ways. You want schools open, fine. We can raise the taxes. But if you don't want that school, if you don't want those taxes raised, we can't keep that school open. So
it's a delicate balance. You touched on something I wanted to. But why doesn't more localities? Why don't they put that out? Like, why don't they just say, hey, this is this is where we are, this is what we're doing? Is it because of we're not going to be able to do the right thing no matter what we do, and we're going to be scrutinized by all sides? The less we say, the less we got to deal with repercussions. Is that the mentality? Or like it would seem like for me, because I'll enjoy this conversation of being just transparent and saying, hey, man, this is where we're at. This is what's going down. This is the deal in business. When I'm going to sit down, I've had to do this inside my own businesses. I'll sit down with the team and go, hey, we got to tighten the strings up. We're going to, everybody's got to, we're not going to have raises this year or whatever. We're going to have to do this. Or there's just some new incentive programs we're rolling out. As if I'm the leader of my, like if you go back to our gym, was not only did I lead, was the leader of our team, I also had all of my members that trusted me and were, I had to communicate with them going back to COVID. Like you go back to the 5-year COVID around this time, I'm doing anything I can to keep information. I had Whitney would come in on my Facebook lives and give me medical value of what was going on in the medical world. I would find another subject matter expert to come in and we would do Facebook lives and inside of our membership and just try to over communicate with everybody that I knew that was being affected. And I try to do that. And when I'm teaching or mentoring a business owner about they're like, I'm struggling to lead my team or whatever. And I'm like, hey, bring them in, let them know, like transparency and explain to them kind of where you are. Is that harder to do from the government side?
I don't know if it's harder to do. I think that different leaders have different reasons. I can say right now, I think the town of Rocky Mount is very transparent on what they want to do. I think Franklin County, maybe not so much. It's kind of like, you can't fuss about what you don't know. Yeah. I think a lot of it also has to do with people do not get involved enough with their local government. They want to sit back and be critical, but when it comes to making that decision, If you don't like the way the board of supervisors or your city council's doing something, there's an easy way to fix that. Vote them out, vote somebody else in. That's, a right by the Constitution that we have to be
Yeah.
able to do that. But, how
I think
many,
also people are like, you know, we don't, you and I, it's easy conversation for you and I to have. I work heavily in business every day. I'm a former government employee. You've retired out of a government system and moving into business. So it's an easy conversation for you and I to have. A lot of folks that are out there, they send their kids to school and their interaction with the government is when they have to pay their yearly stuff and they write a check or they get online and they do that and that's it. They're working, they're doing and their involvement in that until it gets to this point of what the heck's going on, or they end up with time, right, or whatever, and they have some extra time. So people are different from. I've also learned that, like, as much as you and I put a lot of emphasis on whatever, there's that many other people that don't.
yeah, you're right. And I think that's, you've got to be the change. And I think everything in government comes from the people, comes from the groundswell. And when I was director of public safety, I tell my bosses a lot of times, and I truly believe this, and I don't mean this to be a negative on my county, but I still say this: Franklin County wants to be. Let me tell you how you said Franklin County with fire and EMS. Franklin County wanted a Roanoke City system, but they wanted to do it with Craig County money,
Yeah.
and that can't happen.
For folks that are outside the area, Craig County, it's a smaller county.
Yeah,
That's
but you've
adjacent
got
to
to
us.
do it with
Less
whatever.
people. Yeah.
If how many times we've seen people on Facebook go, well, Franklin County has this expositions paying $35,000 a year. Well, Roanoke City, well, I can drive 30 miles up the road and they're making $60,000 a year, which is correct. But Franklin County is paying 43 cents on 100 for real estate, and Roanoke City is paying $1.09 on 100, I believe it is. So again, it goes back to priorities. What are you willing to pay for? But there'll be a board meeting on April the 8th, a public hearing where anybody can go speak in Franklin County. And again, remember, Franklin County has a population of about 55,000, and you may have 75 people at that meeting.
Yeah.
So what if I'm up there and I'm sitting and I'm the decision maker today, and I'm looking at, well, it's 54,000 people in this county, and only 75 has come to voice the objection. Well, it must be 53,000 I hear happy with it. So, you've got to be the voice. Fill that room up with 1,000 people, and you'll see a difference. Roanoke City is the same way. Roanoke City is something like 97, 98,000 people. But at a board or city council meeting, you probably lucky to have 100 there. Yeah. So that means there's 95,000 out there just happy as can be. So I think that you've got to be the voice. You've got to step out and voice. And that doesn't necessarily mean all the time you have to show up at a meeting, but email your leadership. Post something, send them a letter, call them on the phone, just let them know whether you like this. Maybe you think it ought to be a 3-cent tax increase. And let them know that either way. But, and they're in a tough situation. I get that. But I just wish that sometime for people jump out and start posting stuff on social media, they would reach out and try to understand it a little bit more than they do. It's just, and I think you and I do this because we live in this world. But if you call me up and say, hey, next week our guest is going to be X, well, I'm going to research that guest to see
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
because I'm going to try to halfway talk intelligent when they're there. And I think you do the same thing, but a lot of people don't do that. They just,
you lean into the point of kind of what we had talked about earlier was in all of this noise is that small business person or that entrepreneur who's coming in to take a chance and is betting on the support that's going to get from whatever locality. To go back to what we talked about earlier is we've talked about how the role that the county and the towns and the cities plays into business. And, outside of that, if I want to start a business, So we'll use Franklin County as that example. Is I'm going to, especially if it's a brick and mortar business, and I want it to, let's say I want to build. The only other steps that we didn't talk about, Billy, is I'm going to have to make sure that what I want to do fits into the planning and zoning model, and that the health department, if it's food service or anything kind of people-ish, especially with consumption, health department's going to have to be at the table with you. But if you're building anything in Franklin, whether it's even if you go to residential, but even on the business side, you're going to have the grace and sign off of planning and zoning, and a lot of times they want to engineer to make sure that everything's vetted there. But that's that side of it. That can be a process. That's when your Wawas and some of your bigger expansions, or someone's coming in. But for an existing location, like if there's an open space in whatever strip mall that may be there, I go to the landlord and say, hey, I'd like to put this business XYZ into your space. And the landlord's going to say, okay, this is what it's going to cost you per month in order to be able to lease this building. And your barrier of entry sometimes when it comes to starting that small business is not as large as what you think. It's a long-term commitment, meaning, if I'm going to come in, the landlord's like, yeah, this is let's say it's a 5-year lease, and you're looking at a 60-month time, and it's $3,000 a month. Some of that is a personal guarantees, what the landlord's looking for sometimes, and that's guaranteed money that you're personally guaranteed that your business and you are going to pay. The idea sometimes is only the personal guarantee, but the point being is there's an open space. I can go to that landlord or the building owner and say, I want to rent this. There's a lease process that you go through, utilities, all the things. The licensing part, town, county, we've covered that. And then outside of that, if it's food service, you're going to have the sign off of the health department. And then if the building doesn't have the correct certificate of occupancy, we work back with the county or county to get that. Then the business owner goes to marketing plan. Then we're phasing into a marketing plan of grand opening or soft openings, and just trying to generate as much noise about that business being open. You'll see people joining the chambers at that point and different things in the county and different places, depending on the jurisdiction. Sometimes they'll try to do ribbon cuttings and just making sure that that jurisdiction and the world knows, because we use Roanoke, we use Franklin because that's our areas. All of those are as much there's I don't know of any county now that is not a tourist county. Is when you get into agritourism, when you get into your rivers, your lakes, all the stuff that we have in all of our surrounding jurisdictions, about every county is able to benefit, and the people is able to benefit from tourist traffic that's coming in as well. So trying to create as much noise about this business open, that's a business owner. That's them taking that chance and to create that opportunity to put their kind of their livelihood into the citizens of whatever area and the folks that are traveling through to find that success. And that's what I had told you earlier. I'm like, man, it just seems like sometimes folks don't realize that's a that's your neighbor. That's somebody. And if you don't know them, that's maybe somebody that's come in from outside the area that saw the potential in this space that want to make that work. That's not the county. That's not the town. That's somebody who if you like their business, that really needs your support.
Yeah, and Jeff, you bring up some good points there, and I think the other point to add to that is too that when you do that, when you bring in that one business, it's going to spend dollars off to a lot of other businesses too. And I'll use you may have a business that's operating at a loss, but if you look at the overall picture, it's bringing in a lot more money. And I can give you an example in my world with healthcare. Carilion Clinic has 3 helicopters. Well, all 3 of those helicopters operate every year at a loss, and they know they're going to operate at a loss, but they're going to make that loss up on the medical care inside that medical facility. The Harvester Performance Center here, if you pull out just the Harvester and you look at the money that's spent out and coming in, it operates at a loss. but look at the number of restaurants that's came to downtown Rocky Mountain. New motel is coming right now. So all those dollars, I think that Virginia Tech done a study a couple of years ago on the harvest, and I think it said for every $1 that Rocky Mountain spent, $3 came back
Yeah.
for that. So it's the same thing. They're getting ready to build a new motel here in Rocky Mount. Well, it's not just that motel that you're going to look at, but those people staying at that motel are going to eat at the restaurants.
Yeah.
They're going to fill up the car gas. They may run down to Walmart and purchase something. They may run to Kroger and purchase. Well, all that money would not have been there if that motel wouldn't have been there, because those people may have stayed in Roanoke. They may have stayed in Martinsville. And like you said, Franklin County is a big tourist attraction. Now, some people go, what's here? Ain't nothing here but the lake. Well, you know, uh, that may be what you think, that may be what you enjoy, but the Parks and Rec has people that come to the Wade Park all the time. It's got one of the top bicycle motocross tracks in the state there, and you go up there and be people from all over. A couple years ago, we had a Olympic qualifying bike race. People come all over the United States here. You would think that now Ferrum College just moved to Division II, have athletic teams that come in. There was 2 buses set at Holiday Inn all week. That's 40 people tour bus with 2 of them sitting there. Imagine the hotel rooms that was spent, the eating, all that goes into it. So there is a lot of what I call trickle down money, or spin off money that went into that business that people never see. And you made a good point a while ago when those entrepreneurs are spending that money. You used the example of $3,000 a month for 60 months. Well, that money's got to be paid whether that business is making it or not. If that business is flopping, that owner's still paying that $3,000 a month to make no profit. So
To that point, during the during the COVID shutdown, I can speak to our I can speak to part of it is my landlord didn't lose any rent. Like he put it on the back end. I had to pay it on the back end.
yeah,
All he did was extend the lease. Now I didn't have the money to pay him. Right? I'm like, I don't. There's no money here to pay you, and we had to figure that out. But once I got back open, all we did was sign an addendum of me putting his money on the back end. It wasn't like that was forgiven. It's like, oh, Jeff, it's COVID. He needed his money because he had paid the
yeah,
bank too,
he had
right?
the bank payment to make, just like it is. There's no free money.
Yeah, no free money.
There's absolutely no free money.
And to speak, just to take it one step further, to point this out to you, is sometimes when we're there, like we overlook all those cool things that we have. Our proximity to the Blue Ridge, and you're like, man, I go to the Blue Ridge anytime I want to, right? Those inner city folks and folks that live in your larger cities that aren't exposed to the mountains like we are, and they live in what I call a gray city, where it's more concrete and steel than it is green. They're absolutely looking for what our areas have to offer. And some of the advice I give to business sometimes is, if once you can get your advertising moving and your local business is doing well, move all that money outside. Move your advertising pins out to 60 miles and beyond, or focus in on those bigger cities, especially if you're an experience-based business, to where folks that are looking for travel or something different and unique, man, that's a difference in just money coming into the economy, into your town, and supporting that small business that is taking an absolute big chance, to be in our areas, and to come in and to pursue their dreams, right? Um, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. It was on my mind. It's been on my mind. I talked to some friends of mine about it, and I was like, man, it just seems like a huge disconnect sometimes when I'll go to scroll and look, who I feel like gets caught up in it by accident is that business owner, and just because, sometimes I've seen people want it, and I've ran into this before, to where and I've had it happen to me, to where everybody's like, "Oh, Jeff, yeah, we'll support it, and then when you get it open, those
Yeah.
folks that said that don't show. and that support doesn't come to you like you thought it was, and here you are, you've taken this big chance, and it's not there now. Well, listen, we all learn, and that's just a part of it. But I guess what I was probably wanting to get out is like the county and town's not writing a check on the back end to ensure that business's success. That's you going in and us as patrons going in and supporting them.
Oh, absolutely. That now, like you said earlier, they may be given a tax break, but most of the time that comes back on the back end somehow. It's like they're not going to have free taxes for the next
Yeah, yeah.
50 years, whatever. And a lot of times when there is some money fronted, like some incentives, if that business doesn't meet their projected financial goals, employment goals, they have to pay that money back.
Yeah.
That just happened out here in Henry County, I believe it was, just a while back, where they had somebody in Henry County business was not meeting their employment projections. They'd come in and say, by 5 years we're going to employ 300 people, or whatever the number was, and 5 years came, they have employed like 80. Well, they had to pay back
Yeah.
$400,000.
Yeah, economic development incentives are based on the tax revenue that you're going to generate that they recoup over time. Again, Billy, there's no free money.
Right. No.
Is that you all they did was put no different me and my rent situation is they help you get going. Very, very valuable assets based on the number of jobs you're going to create. And when I'm coaching someone on that, is that's always comes up like, Jeff, hey, can we do this? And I go, yeah, absolutely. Let's create these conversations. And as they get further along, and it always kind of comes up, then they start to see like, wait a minute, there's some strings attached to this. I'm like, absolutely. There's absolutely some strings that attach to that, but some folks make it work. I know people that have leaned into that and had very good success with it, built great relationships, great companies off of those incentives, and it helps give you a breather up front. But the whole goal of that economic development incentive is to create jobs, and they recoup their money through the taxation that comes along with that. And I used to know the figures off the top of my head. I had someone explain them to me one time. It's like each job creates this much in tax revenue. We forecast off of this, and when it gets to a certain levels, man, the economic directors and the counties that I'm able to work around, they're very resourceful. And folks, if that's someone you can reach out and talk with and create a conversation with them as well. And then Billy does here to help you navigate a lot of what we do. Let's wrap it up, Billy. Man, this is good. I'm glad that I feel like I got some stuff off my chest. That I've just been like, hey, man, I just want folks to know, man, that sometimes that business owner is out there on that is a lonely world sometimes, and they're waiting on you to come in and give them a chance to earn your business, and that there's no magic pill that if that just waiting, if they fail, that someone's picking that tab up. So this has been a great conversation, man. I appreciate you letting me have it.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me, and I do want to give you a plug there. If anybody's looking for an entrepreneur, business person out there wanting to open a business, to reach out to Jeff, and he can point you in a direction as far as the business itself. But reach out to me, and I can help you with the emergency action plans. The things that go into the emergency side of it. That's part of developing your business plan. How many fire extinguishers you got to have? Does it have to be sprinkled? Does it have to be sprinkled or not? Does it need AEDs? That kind of stuff I can help you with. So I think that we're two great resources that can be an asset to you as you reach out and start to open your dream business.
I dropped your links, your LinkedIn and my links in the thing there. What's your email, Billy?
Email wferguson62 @gmail.com, or Jeff's favorite, william.ferguson@fergusonsafetysolutions.com. So give me a shout, give me an email.
Billy's got 2 business cards he puts in on. I'm just messing with you, man.
Well, it really says continued on back.
Man, we've been giving each other a hard time for years, and I value your opinion, your conversation. I'm glad we get to do this every couple of weeks, and hopefully folks if you got some value out of this and you're like, holy crap, I didn't realize that, make sure you share it with your friends. We just wanted to, our goal is always to try to leave you all better than maybe we found you, and just give you some insight on business leadership and some lessons that we've learned along the way. So thank you for being with me tonight, brother.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff. Have a good one.